Hey, it's Alex again, and this is going to be my first video in the 101 series on skill trees. This video series aims to shed some light on skill tree changes over the past few years. This is both for new players and for old players. So general changes to skills is that you no longer have the ability to pick which passives you get. You get all the passives, and you only get 18 skill points rather than 28 like before. Another restriction that was added was that you have to have a certain amount of points in your skill line to get a skill at the end of the tree. The requirements are 3 skill points, 4 skill points, and 5 skill points. This means you would need 4 skill points in total to unlock and take Arc Lightning in this example. So Sorcery actually is one of the skill trees that had no skills removed or added to it. It all is the same skills, however the combos changed. So let's start with the very first skill you get, Flame Bolt, basically Fireball. Flame Bolt no longer combos on innervated opponents, nor does it combo on shield opponents. However, it does combo on shocked opponents now. This is a sorcery change in general. Fire damage no longer combos with chilled, and chilled no longer combos with fire damage. So in this example, Flame Bolt will get more powerful if you hit a shocked ability first. Alright, the next skill, Freezing Arrow. I think Freezing Arrow probably got the most nerfed out of all the skills. It used to be a mini nuke you could run if you had a slept opponent. You could do up to 34% extra damage onto them. It also had a small increase in damage on burning foes, although that part was a little bit less relevant. Alright, so it still applies Deep Freeze on chilled opponents, which is the main reason to run this now. Insulating Lens has gone over a lot of changes in the past few years. However, the current iteration has a small cast time, lasts for 40 seconds, blocks a decent amount of damage, and also prevents trips. It also has a single combo which is very good, which I'll get into later. Arc Lightning used to combo off shocked foes to do more damage and impaled foes, however this is no longer the case. That has been substituted for burning. Magic Circle is still very good, it's still basically the same skill. However, I don't really run this because I don't tend to have a spare point to put it into, but if you do, it's pretty good to take. Freezing Earth is better in my opinion now. It can now not only apply chill, but it can also apply the deep freeze debuff, which is a very long stun if you don't know what it is. It's about 5 seconds in PvP. However, the combo with burning to do more damage is gone, which is fine, and I'll take that every day of the week. Flame Barrier is a skill I don't typically use very often, however I do think it's very good in conjunction with Occultism, since Occultism is a very up-close mage, and Flame Barrier is an up-close skill. It can be a great source to apply burning, but I don't really use it. However, if you're running Occultism, I do suggest you use it because it's very good in Occultism. Now, Chain Lightning is a must-take in my opinion if you're running Sorcery, since you can see at the bottom its combo with Insulating Lens, a stun, and a silence. So if you have Insulating Lens on and you cast Chain Lightning on your enemy, the primary foe you hit will be stunned for 1.5 seconds and silenced for 1.5 seconds. Searing Rain is more or less the same skill. It's a PvE AoE damage. You don't really take it in PvP, but if you're trying to power farm, this would be a great skill to take. Frigid Tracks is still one of the best ways to trigger melees, since it applies deep freeze for them just simply standing on it. Since they are melees, they have to get up close to you, and if you just walk backwards and they follow you, they'll get stunned. That alone would be justification to take it. However, it also makes your Freezing Arrow an instant cast, which is also just amazing. Now we'll be talking about Meteor Strike. Meteor Strike is Sorcery's strongest hitting skill by far. Meteor no longer combos with Freezing Arrow, which means you can't do the absurd one-shot where you would run up to someone, lassitude them, instantly start casting Meteor, and then do an Ice Arrow right before it hit them to one-shot them essentially. But I think Meteor is still very strong and you should be taking it almost always. And obviously has the shock increase since it's a fire move. God's Whip is more or less the same skill. They only removed the combo where you would be able to reduce people's healing on chilled enemies. Still very much a staple in sorcery builds. Alright, so I'm going to go over the passives fairly quickly. Mana pool increase has been increased from 15% to 35%, big buff. Aramzeb's Infusion has an 8% decrease in cast time on only sorcery skills. Mind over Matter is what replaced the anti-fear passive in sorcery before. It now just reduces silences by 30%, which can be useful. Mana Fountain is a relatively new passive. It adds attack speed and cast time if you cast either Insulating Lens, Frigid Track, or Magic Circle. This is quite a big buff and very useful. Air of Neonad is just the nerf version of the previous passive where it would give you 15% skill damage on sorcery skills. It's now only 10%. Sorcery Adept is also just a nerf version of a previous sorcery passive. It used to be 10% crit rate bonus, now it is only 9%. I think now we're going to take a look at Ancestral skills. Ancestral skills are basically skills that get morphed once you hit past level 55. There is level requirements for each skill to be morphed. In Sorcery, the skills that can be morphed are Flame Bolt, Chain Lightning, Meteor Strike, and God's Whip. Start with Flame Bolt. Flame Bolt has two morphs, lightning and flame. So the flame version just lets you cast one big boy flame bolt, and the lightning version actually removes the cast time but adds a cooldown. Backdrop still does work with both of these versions, except for the big boy one, you'll be able to cast maybe 2, 3 depending on your attack speed. And the lightning version, you'll just remove the cooldown of it, so you'll be able to cast a lot of these. I personally think the lightning one is better for general use. However, you can make good use of the fire version since it is a one-tick conflagration, which is good for bubble trap, fears, and even arc lightning. Okay, so now we're going to talk about chain lightning. Chain lightning has two morphs, fire version and ice version. The fire version removes the damage on it, but adds a burning AoE that lasts 2 seconds and bounces between players. And the ice version no longer stuns and silences off insulating lens combo, but you do get an AoE snare, which freezes the enemy. So if you get this snare to hit, if they walk into it on accident, you can hit an ice arrow and it will deep freeze them. Both of these versions are pretty good. The fire version can be comboed with bubble trap or even fears to extend the duration of them or make them go higher. And the ice version, you can get a cheeky deep freeze off of instant cast, which is pretty good. Alright, so now we're going to talk about Meteor Strike. Meteor Strike has some really good morphs. There are two versions, a lightning and an ice. The lightning makes it into an instant cast, and it also applies an attack speed debuff and a movement speed buff. And it is a huge debuff to hit. So it can be a little tricky to hit, but you can get a CC off and almost always hit it. And it'll be a great skill to use for just general use. Now the ice version is actually my favorite to use, just because how much damage it does. As you can see, it only has a 438% scaling. However, that's per projectile that's hit. And you can hit up to 5 before they're deep frozen. And if they're deep frozen in the skill, they no longer take damage. So if you times 438% by 5, that's over 2000%, which is more than double than the default Meteor Strike. Now you do have to do some cheese to make this hit consistently. How I usually do it is Earthen Grip into the Mist Form Banshee's Veil. This will keep them in place while being feared, so that means I can easily hit my Meteor Strike. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about God's Whip, which is the last Ancestral morph. It has two versions, Lightning and Wave. Lightning makes a cast time on it, which is 1 second for me. However, it does ignore global cooldown now, so that means you can cast it. You can basically weave with this a lot easier than you normally would be able to. However, I don't like the cast time. It just feels out of place on this skill. The Wave version affects a small area, and anyone in the area can be hit by lightning procs. They can be hit up to 8 times. I use this version just because how easy it is to just throw out there and just do damage over time. However, I think the global cooldown one is better for people who like to weave their spells. Alright, so that's Sorcery in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I'll try to get back with you when I can. Also, if you have a suggestion of a skill tree or a request, go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. But that's all I have, and I'll see you next time, boys.
In your head, it's always